Hi, everyone. Welcome to Opening the Bedroom Doors. My name is Jessie Fresh. I am a sex coach, and I am here with my friend Andy Fitch, and we are going to be talking about aftercare during this episode. Let's take a moment to close our eyes, to shift from whatever it is that you were doing, and that way we can just feel more settled. Say hello to us in the chat if you are here. Engage with us as much as you'd like, and then we'll move on. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and maybe take a big stretch. Take a big breath and make some sound on your exhale. Great. On the next exhale, I want you to make a sound of what your day has been like so far. Great. On the next exhale, I want you to pretend that you're a horse. Great. On the next exhale, I want you to pretend that you're motorboating someone. Okay, you can open your eyes now. That totally cracked me. The imagery that came through. Welcome to Opening the Bedroom Doors again. Type in the chat how you're feeling. I'm feeling like buzzy and slow now from that. Opening the Bedroom Doors is a place where you get to learn a little bit more about things that people are doing behind closed doors that we don't talk about, that we don't explore because we don't know that they're happening. And often in my private sex coach practice, I hear people say like, well, how am I expected to know what I want when I don't even know what the options are and I don't know what other people are doing? And therefore, like, I judge myself when I do think of the things that I want, because are those normal? And this show is all about exposing us to the things that people are doing to explore more erotic possibility, erotic expansion, exploration, and fun, sexy times. So we have Andy Fitch with us, and Andy and I are going to talk about aftercare. Last week we had sensual impact play, which is a form of like kink play. And anytime that you do something like that sensual impact play or beyond, or we'll go through like when you would want to do aftercare, you want to do aftercare. So Andy and I have met through the Erotic Blueprint Coach training, and Andy and his partner Caress offered a like kink party online, and I attended and immediately wanted to absorb all the things that they had to share. I prefer she, her pronouns. And Andy, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Andy Fitch. I'm half of the Mindful Passions team. Caress is the other half, of course. Mm-hmm. He, they pronouns, which means that I prefer he, but I will answer to they, no problem. Awesome. Been doing this for, I don't know how long now, but I love learning more and more about every bit of sexuality, especially kink, and sensuality, and just taking each piece. So I'm so glad to be here today talking about aftercare. Wonderful.
Yay. When you say you've been doing this for so long, do you mean like being kinky and practicing aftercare? Or
yeah, being kinky and practicing aftercare, doing all this. Yeah. I've been teaching on consent since 1990. I realized.
Oh yeah.
So
cool.
So consent and communication, all that, and then evolved into teaching psychological kink and writing erotica around psychological kink and humiliation play and CNC and all of these things, and so. But I always like to have a start with a major foundation. Of consent, of aftercare, of all of these things that you must communicate honestly about.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I love that. I'm glad that I asked, like, what is for so long? Like, and what does that mean? Someone said, and we need it, teaching on consent. Yeah, right. For Absolutely. Sure.
We do not live in a consent-based society. And every one of us who teaches it, hopefully we can switch it, we can change it over, at least somewhat.
If there has not been more of a present time where that has been aware for me, like COVID has made the consent conversation so aware of like who knows how to do it, who doesn't know how to do it, how that shows up, and how shitty it can feel, and all the things in between of assuming consent and beyond. So yeah, I
Absolutely. And it's funny, I've talked to a lot of polyamorous people, and we all agree on this one thing: is one of the future consent questions, when you're getting to know somebody in the polyamorous community, is what did you do during COVID? How did you keep you and your partner safe? Because that's going to tell a lot about how safe, other practices are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Andy, will you share with people what aftercare is?
Certainly. Most time people think of aftercare as a part of BDSM, and it's essential in BDSM. But to me, any great sex is bookended by two things: foreplay and aftercare. Right? And foreplay can go on for hours, can go on for days. In psychological kink, you can tease and denial. All of these things can go on and on and on. But a lot of times we main event, quote unquote, happens, and then we forget about aftercare. And aftercare with quote unquote vanilla sex can be as simple as getting a towel, cleaning up. Can I have a drink of water? Can we cuddle? Can we talk? And aftercare, even in that way, helps the two or more people, to connect emotionally quicker. Let me ask you, have you ever felt sad or lonely or anything after sex, after great sex session? That ever happened to you?
You're reminding me of a time when my partner decided to look at their phone after I had orgasmed, and I almost like threw a book at them. I was like, "How dare you!" Because I was wanting.
What do you mean, almost?
Yeah, I was like, "Why would you do that?" Yeah, this is a sacred time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That is aftercare. All of that is aftercare. Attention to your partner. That is all aftercare.
Yeah.
Because there's a thing that a lot of people, that happens to a lot of people, called post-coital dysphoria, also known as post-sex blues. Right.
Aww.
And it's just it's a sadness. It's sex was great, but now I have dropped.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can happen because you were in this fantasy world of amazing feelings and amazing, the hormones and the brain chemicals and everything's firing. And then suddenly you're back to the real world, quote unquote, the normal life. Right. And so you need the foreplay to start, and you need the aftercare to lead you back. And so makes sense, right? So that is a great way to avoid postcoital dysphoria. Is with aftercare.
I only want sex that has postcoital dysphoria. Just saying. That's
your favorite? You like that part? That's your kink?
I mean, my thought is, if that's not happening, was there enough foreplay? Was there enough pleasure for me to feel the need for the postcoital aftercare to happen? Does that make sense?
We have a question here. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If there's no height, then there's no drop.
Yeah.
Like you want the drop to be. You at least want a parachute, right? If you're gonna drop, give me a parachute, and that's aftercare.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a question over here. I see about sex drop. Like, is it like sub drop? Absolutely, and we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. There's all sorts of drop, and it has to do with a lot of different things. It was once thought that it's simply brain chemicals, but there's more and more studies going on about what else is going on, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Ooh,
let's switch over from vanilla sex into BDSM, right? Well, if people get drop, after, I don't want to say normal sex because I'm not even sure what normal sex is, but non-BDSM sex, then, you can imagine how much more there is if you have set up a scene that you have negotiated for hours, you have all your paraphernalia, you have all the things, you have a trust with your partner who's going to be doming you, you have all this built up, and then the fantasy that you've been looking for is going to be happening over the next few hours, possibly, right? And there could be, right, all sorts of sensuality, there's all sorts of pain and pleasure and restraint and whatever you're into. Obviously, all of your brain chemicals are going to be firing. And you are going to run out. And right, I would liken it to ecstasy. Not that anybody's ever taken ecstasy, but what you're asking your brain to do is fire all chemicals, all pleasure chemicals right now, and then you have none for several days. And so that's the kind of thing that can happen when you're asking all these chemicals to come forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm having a hard time paying attention because that song, Drop It Like It's Hot, just keeps coming into my mind. And I'm like, you are not necessary right now. Thank you. You're not the theme song for this. But that completely makes sense of, yeah, having such a high, having all of your cylinders firing and then being depleted and needing that aftercare to help land you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. It's essential. And there's so many different kinds of aftercare, which we'll get into, but it's funny. When we get into this and people start talking about aftercare, you can think of, water, towel. But if you imagine somebody, let's say it's a public kink party, and they've been on stage and they've been naked, and they've been whipped, and they've been, whatever it is that they requested. And I'll admit, I keep pausing myself because I want to go into a 20-minute discussion on consent, which I normally do first, but we'll do that some other time. But all the good consent things has happened. Everything is going well. And sometimes even with all the consent things don't go well. But for right now, let's say everything happened magically. It was an amazing experience. It's somebody, let's say they wanted to cry. They wanted to have this great outpouring of emotion, and they had it. It was cathartic, and it was amazing, and lost count of the orgasms and everything, right? But afterwards, what happens afterwards, right? Number one, take them off the cross. Take all the bondage, wear off. Number one, don't forget that. Obviously, the scene is over. And one of the reasons that I really appreciate the BDSM term scene is there's a very strict beginning and ending. We're going to go into the fantasy world. We're going to do this as prescribed, and then we're out. Once we're out, part of taking all that thing off, those things off, that's the beginning of the procedure. Doesn't end there, though. Water, towel, blanket, robe, something to stay warm, because there's frequently a shock factor, depending on what you've gotten into. And so part of the consent conversation is what aftercare is about. Cannot forget that part. So one particular person whose experience is a lot easier with, because they're like, okay, here's what I need. I need my white fluffy robe afterwards.
Yeah.
I need this stuffy. I need a glass of water. I need some milk. I need some juice. I need my sippy cup. Whatever. And this is the movie I want to watch, because those are all important things.
Yeah.
Yes, I see a comment over here. My kink partner got me a special blanket just for aftercare. Yes. Aww. Some people have a special blanket that has a certain smell, or a weighted blanket is very important, because, as we know, as erotic blueprint coaches, meditation is a big thing. All sorts of things are big, that they're all about grounding us, right? Well, what is BDSM a scene like? It's the anti-grounding. It's making one with the universe. It's you're flying, you're floating. So all of those practices that we do to ground somebody are essential after a scene. How about you? What aftercare have you that's worked for you?
Aftercare is almost one of my favorite parts because it feels so nurturing and so loving. It can feel nurturing and loving, and just like kind of that feeling of like when you're a kid and you're like sucking your thumb and nuzzling in and snuggling into like some breasts. You're just like, yeah, this is great. And that's actually what I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great for aftercare, is like blanket snuggling, like something in my mouth that's either tasty or like orally stimulating. And I have rested my face in someone's breast that was like, great, I would love to just snuggle you in. Being pet and soothed, being told like that I did well, or being praised in some way. And being given permission that like the aftercare can be very slow, because taking up space afterwards, and like I tend to not take up a lot of space when it is about taking care of me, when it's other people taking care of me. So when they're like, we could do aftercare for like a good 90 minutes or more if you need that, that feels so good. And like, I want to eat comfort food. I could just go on and on. It could be, yeah.
There. I mean, you know what it's like. And you mentioned an important thing, being told you did a good job.
Yeah.
Any kind of aftercare, people feel guilty afterwards. Some people, just because from any sex, some people feel guilty. You know, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in there. What's wrong with me that I'm into this thing? And nothing's wrong with you, but these are the thoughts that you have afterwards.
Yeah.
And spending time saying what was good, what was great, you know, afterwards, you know, and telling your partner how amazing they are, and hearing that's an essential part for the connection and for the aftercare. Absolutely.
I love that. I see some people are like, yeah, chiming in. This is what I like. I love that. If you have anything else you want to add of like aftercare items that maybe haven't been named, that please put those in the chat. And I love, Andy, your emphasis that aftercare is negotiated before you even enter into a scene.
Yes.
Because why is that?
Well, once you're into the scene, you don't have the brain space for deciding what your aftercare is, right? And we're going to get into a little consent here. To me, if you're working with somebody new, a new dom, for example, or if it's something you're new to, you know, you need to have a lot of consent conversations, right? So it all depends on how much and what you're doing, how much you're doing, how in depth you're doing, and how new is it to you. But there should always be a lot of written consent information that has been agreed upon, and it should never be at the party place. Once you're there, you're already like, oh my, yes. Oh, I want to try that. I want to try that. I want to do this. Right.
Yeah.
Once that starts happening, and that's why once the scene starts, you can always negotiate down, meaning, no, this is too much. I need to stop. Or we can figure this. But you can never negotiate up. Because once you're in the middle of it and you're not feeling pain anymore, it's like, yeah, more. Nope. We don't go beyond what we previously negotiated.
That's because you're high as balls. You're just like, I said no before to sex, but like I'm totally open to penetration now, or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. And you're gonna be like a little newborn baby after. Well, that's my own version.
Fair. Yeah. Written agreements, very important. Very important. In fact, if you're playing the same type of kink with the same people, keep that written document. But you create a new one. Yeah, I use Google Docs for everything. Copy the previous one, go through, yes. Oh, I didn't like that. Let's take that out of here. Do this things. Yes, I need the same stuffies that you had last time for aftercare. Right. Yeah. There's a few. So we've talked about aftercare. Let's talk about drop a little more, sub drop. Yeah. Drop, we've talked about some of these feelings, but drop can go a lot further. You can get to a point where you can't calm down, you're irritable, you're still up. It's still going on in your head. The scene has not ended. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's feelings of guiltiness, worthiness, worthlessness, tired, lazy. Um, you can have drop for days.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that. And suddenly your hobbies or even sex is not interesting to you. You just part of it is the brain chemicals that are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Your body needs to create more.
Yeah.
Before it's going to have that enjoyment again. Um, so one of the most important things to remember about aftercare is it is not done that day. It's possible it may not be done that day. You have to do it. You do it that day, but then there's what you can do the next day,
Mm.
second week, the third week,
Mm.
because there's some play that if you're getting into humiliation play, you're getting into consensual non-consent (CNC),
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which has to be insanely negotiated and
Mm-hmm.
documented. Um, you can trigger nightmares. You can trigger trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's important to check in with your partner, call them, your sub, make sure they're okay, because nightmares may not start until 3 weeks after the event.
Mm. Mm.
So this is the depth of aftercare when we're talking about that kind of play.
I love that.
Yeah, first 72 hours are vital,
Mm-hmm.
but um, so yeah, this is very, very important. And there's signs of depression that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be treated like that. And just the term a lot of times is babysitter. I prefer the term caregiver.
Yeah.
That is the person who's assigned to take care of the person.
Mm.
I want to dispel one myth.
Yeah.
Many people think that there's one dom, one sub, and those are the only two people who are part of the aftercare, part of the negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Very frequently, the dom is not the person the sub wants to talk to afterward.
Uh-huh.
Like, you just beat the shit out of me for 2 hours. You can call me all these names, and yes, I know I told you to do it, but I hate you right now. I don't even want to look at you right now. So that is the wrong person for aftercare.
Mm.
There's a couple I know, and they've been playing here in the Austin scene for years. And she likes a lot of different things, and so she'll work with different doms for the different scenes. But her partner, her nesting partner, he doesn't participate in any of that. He is always there for the aftercare. He will bring her robe, her stuffies, her everything, and just wait for her to be done, and then provide the aftercare for days and weeks afterwards.
Oh, that's so
And
lovely.
right. So when I talk about it's not necessarily the dom who's doing the aftercare. This is
Mm-hmm.
another thing that has to be negotiated ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain
Yeah.
nesting partner for people that I've seen? I've heard you say it. I think I know what that is, but for anyone that's like, come again, what? Like, we're
Fair
building
enough.
a nest. Like, that's like something that I hear in pregnancy. Is it like you're nesting? But could you share what a nesting partner is?
Absolutely.
It's a very cute image in my mind of like bluebirds.
It is a cute term, and I love that term. Nesting partner, I believe, came from the polyamory communities,
Mm-hmm.
and who because there's constantly new ways of relating. And by the way, I'm a relationship anarchist, which means that do not assume any rules if you want to get into a relationship with me.
Mm-hmm.
We will discuss everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Thanks for clarifying that too.
what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Yeah.
Right. And so and so people who are always inventing new types of relationships have to come up with terms.
Mm-hmm.
So a nesting partner is somebody you live with
Mm-hmm.
and you're romantically involved with, not a roommate. So it may not be, because the terms of girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance, wife, husband may not apply.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to say roommate either.
Mm-hmm.
So nesting partner takes the place of that.
Thank you. Love that.
So as to answer the question for people who don't know, my weird background here, I live in a van with my wife, and we travel across the country teaching on kink. And
so you're in the bedroom.
We are nesting partners. Yes. Yeah. Right. We're in the bedroom right now, and so we are nesting partners.
That's awesome.
Very clear. We became nesting partners when we had a house, but we were still nesting partners.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married. Yeah.
Awesome. Does it feel like the right thing now to talk about is like what aftercare isn't?
To me, aftercare is anything that the bottom needs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if something sounds damaging, like more damaging, like it's going to make it worse, I would have a long conversation and really prove it. Are you sure you want to be beat some more as aftercare? That doesn't sound right, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, and so there'll be a lot of discussions there. But aftercare is anything that they need to come back to reality in the best way they can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of anything that I would, you know, so many different. I think also. I'm trying to think of other things that are aftercare and things that's going to help you figure out what's not aftercare.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot that's we talked about nutrients a little bit, water, juice, chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the psychological things. You know, the soft voice from the dom or the caregiver afterwards. Honey, you did a phenomenal job. I'm so proud of you. Let me get the blanket for you. You know, all of that is wonderful. If somebody, you know, I would say screaming at the person, that would be not aftercare. That'd be an anti-pattern.
Yeah.
You know, so anything that's not soothing, that riles somebody back up, you know, into another state. Like I said, you know, long strokes across the body are excellent for grounding. Um, um, I think whoever's doing the aftercare, the caregiver, must understand. I don't think I would play with anybody who doesn't thoroughly understand aftercare and what it is and what it is not. And yes, we've had sex with partners. I think we all have that did not get aftercare, was not there for aftercare, for vanilla sex, or certain days things got too busy. We didn't know the kids interrupted or something happened, and there's zero aftercare. You know, but if you're playing in this space, the BDSM space, you can't have those things. You have to set time aside. These are psychological games, and you have to have somebody that thoroughly understands. You know, somebody who said, "Yeah, I'll cuddle you afterwards," whatever, that's spank you on the ass. It's like, no,
Serious
no,
job.
no.
Yeah.
Right, it is. It's important.
Yeah. Do doms or tops need aftercare?
Great. I was going to go there, and thank you for going there.
Yeah.
Top drop is a thing.
Top drop.
Top drop. And this is why it's also important to have a fourth person. When I teach all this from the front end, there are four essential people: the sub, the dom, the caregiver, and the dungeon monitor.
Cool.
The dungeon monitor, and there are certifications to become a dungeon monitor. I have not gotten my certification yet because COVID. Caress is a certified dungeon monitor. And it's about watching the scenes. You have to have a few dungeon monitors, even if it's a small private party. Have the dungeon monitors walking around, making sure that all the rules are being followed. Right, even if it's filled with people who are all about consent. This is why you need that fourth person. Usually, if the dom is in control, they're keeping in mind all the rules, the safe words, and everything else. But the doms are doing this because they love it as well. And I've seen doms get into it, and somebody wanted to be flogged until they're read out, for example. I want you to flog me until I yell red and I'm done. So that's okay. That's an agreed upon thing. And the dom is so much into dom space that he is just flogging over and over and over again. And she may have read it out. And because of the space he's in, he doesn't hear her say anything. That's why you've got to have the dungeon monitor there. Say, no, that was the rule. You have to stop. And because the dom gets into those spaces as well, gets caught up into it, they're going to have drop as well.
Will you explain reading out for people? Because
yes.
I'm like, for someone that doesn't know what reading out is, my mind is coloring in like when someone's being flogged and then like red, like blood gets everywhere.
Fair. Let me
Active imagination.
People can have, yes, people can have complex safe words and things. Most
Mm-hmm,
people don't.
mm-hmm.
You
Too
know,
complicated.
some word like octopus, some word I'm not going to actually use during sex.
Pineapple.
Octopus,
Yeah.
asparagus, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Most people that I know don't. They use the traffic light:
Mm-hmm.
green, yellow, red. For example, if I'm just starting out with somebody over to new flogger or something new and want to experiment, and someone says, "Yeah, let me have it," no, you've never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to do is I'm going to hit you lightly. I'm going to stroke it across your back. We're going to do this slowly. And every time I do it, you're going to say green if you want me to continue.
Mm.
So it's green, green. After a while, you can say, okay, I trust you now to say yellow or red
Mm-hmm.
if you need a change.
Mm-hmm.
But with a new tool, a new partner, everything else, yeah, definitely green, green, green. I need to hear it, green. That way it keeps us both, either one of us, from getting,
Mm-hmm.
into subspace or dom space where we stop listening.
Yeah.
Yellow is pause for renegotiation,
Mm.
for any renegotiation.
Mm-hmm.
The yellow, and that scene just stops. And okay, what do you need? I need a glass of water. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to stop hitting me there.
Mm-hmm.
Too many times. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Renegotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Red means the scene is over.
Mm-hmm.
Period. You say red, we're done. The aftercare is beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the term possibly comes from like wrestling and martial arts, where somebody taps out to mean I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Where they've combined that with the symbol of red, and it's redding out.
Mm-hmm.
You yell red and to say it, you're done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one caveat here, I've worked with some people who redding out was the purpose because they've had some trauma in their past.
Mm-hmm.
Things happened to them that they had no control over,
Mm-hmm.
and they play in these games, the BDSM games, because they want to prove themselves over and over again that they have control.
Mm.
And so they'll get into something and they're like, red! And the scene will stop. They're like, yes, I had control.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So redding out is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense?
Yeah. So I just have to say that the way that you bring up certain things that you practice in kink makes it all feel so safe. Like I already feel there's like my body is like, yes, Andy, like when can we do something? Because this feels very safe. The way that you speak about it is I think really reassuring for anyone that feels hesitant or that feels like they don't, that there's trust maybe that needs to be built. Like the way that you speak about it is, I'm like, oh, safety is the number one priority. And communication,
Absolutely.
consent, and all those things that you've brought up in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, and I came up with this idea, I think I was a teenager. And I think then I called it good scary and bad scary. Right? If you're in you like horror movies and you're in the theater
Mm-hmm.
and you know you're safe, you're with your friends, that's
Mm-hmm.
good scary. It's safe scary. Adrenaline's pumping, right?
Uh-huh.
But you're watching somebody walk down a dark alley and then something comes up behind them.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's actually you in the dark alley next to the theater, that's bad scary. That's for real danger.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So it's about, to me, it's the difference between roller coasters at a theme park I trust
Mm-hmm.
and roller coasters at a traveling carnival. Are you sure you assembled it correctly?
Uh-huh.
Good scary, bad scary. And it's all about safety. So to me, BDSM done right is almost always playing on the good scary.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have had these discussions, so we're playing at fear.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing at pain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Thank you. Someone in the comments said, "Can you talk about aftercare for virtual scenes?"
Virtual. I'm assuming meaning online, like this.
I would think
I'm
so.
assuming.
Oh, because you're not in the same vicinity. You need that third person, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I have been teaching. Cress and I have been teaching psychological kink a lot during
Yeah.
the quarantine
Yeah.
because a lot of people can't play. So we talk about, writing erotica and tease and denial and what you can do, over Zoom, what you can't do over Zoom,
Hmm.
and so yeah, there's a lot of online or virtual play right now. So I
Hmm.
appreciate the question. Virtual scenes. There's only so much you can do remotely, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, if you had somebody there, a caregiver there, who can provide the things, that's
Hmm.
best.
Hmm.
Um, but virtual scenes, it can be all about humiliation. For example, you don't have to lay hands on anybody.
Hmm.
We've already discussed what words I'm allowed to use, what words I'm not allowed to use,
Hmm.
and so we're building this up, and you are, the person on the other side of the Zoom can be coming and crying at the same time, and that's hard to do because I'm over. I could be halfway across the country, half across the world, and so I would definitely recommend having somebody there.
Mm.
And if you have somebody there that you do not, if the sub has nobody that they trust around, at
Hmm.
least have somebody in the next room so that if an emergency happens, they can be called in.
Hmm.
Just prepare for the worst. It's
Hmm.
somebody. Just ignore all the sounds in the room unless I yell this. you
Uh-huh.
know it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
Um, Afterwards, especially with humiliation play, it helps for the person who's been doing the doming to say the comforting words. It says, that was just play, right? And you know why we did it that way. And
Mm.
let's talk about your healing. Have some people do this for healing of past things.
Hmm.
And so talking about it in the comforting voice, I
Hmm.
call it the late night DJ voice.
Yeah, your voice right now, I'm like,
the early morning. So
yeah.
when I do that voice, that's when people usually tell me, "Do you have a podcast I can listen to? Do you record any of your erotica?"
Oh my gosh. I mean, if
That's so.
Caress was on Opening the Bedroom Doors talking about psychological kink, and Caress's voice is what I aspire to like integrate into my being, because Caress is very calm, very thoughtful,
Mm,
soothing, and you too now, I realize that both of you have those same qualities in your voice, that it energetically and physically changes the person that's listening. It changes how they feel because of the tone and the pace being like
right,
safe,
right,
soothing, relaxing. It's great.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do that kind of aftercare. You can do that kind of aftercare remotely.
Mm.
But providing the blanket, also virtually, I would say, if we already know what the aftercare should be, say, okay, do you have your blanket? I want to see it. Okay, is
Hmm.
your stuffy there? Have you already poured the water?
Hmm.
So I can do those things ahead of time to make sure that they're available.
Yeah, that's great. Do you see that other little comment under there?
What if you've never had a BDSM or kink experience? How do you vet someone or know when you can trust? Okay. Um, One, someone, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, in my opinion. If someone is cheating on their taxes and talks shit about everybody and kicks their dog and all that, no, I'm not trusting this person to do anything. Tie me up, beat me, anything, right? So, but of course, there's also the people who are very good and smooth, and you think they're not a problem. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's not always reliable.
Hmm.
Um, Bring a friend when you can.
Hmm.
Oh, let me start here. Actually, I highly recommend if you're new to kink and BDSM to attend parties that have been vetted by people you trust.
Hmm. Hmm.
Two, let me remind you that um, voyeurism is participation. You can go to a kink party for the sole reason of watching what other people do,
That's me.
and that's great.
Hmm.
So you go and ooh, I like that. I don't think I could ever do that. What is that even called?
Hmm.
You go there, and so that's I was. recommend doing that first, learning about different things, and maybe you meet somebody there. There's a reason kink communities exist in every major U.S. city.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's, if someone's been trusted, if someone's been blacklisted, you already know about it, So, yeah, reputation is an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, if you want to be tied up in a fake sort of way, paper handcuffs is a thing. Play it paper handcuffs. Just take little tape, little paper handcuffs. Play it. Ooh, I'm restrained, right?
Like in Christmas time, I'm never going to see those any differently now. Those are like when people take little pieces of paper and make a little
red and green.
Just be like, look at all the handcuffs everywhere.
Use those. Right.
Yeah.
Well, then my job here is done.
Yes.
So, start there.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of novelty handcuffs that don't withstand anything. Mm-hmm. Black thread is another good one. Because you can feel that you're held with black thread, but you could snap that thing anyway. So begin, if you're not sure, begin playing at simple things you can escape from, where it's just in your mind. I would never suggest letting somebody for real tie you up that you just met. There's a thing called pickup play, which is you go to a kink party and you start playing with somebody you've never met before. Without negotiation, without consent conversations, without STI talks, I do not recommend pickup play. Go learn, and then get a few people to talk, and then go to those people, go to brunch with them, talk to them, build trust in other parts of life, and go from there.
Thank you. That's a reminder. Like the first time that I ever spent in kink play parties, which was a public space, not just an invite only, I just watched for the entire year. Every time I'd show up, it was a monthly kink event, I would show up and I would be like, grab my popcorn and my cute outfit, and I'm just going to observe, because that felt really safe for me. It felt hot as well to be able to be like, let's change the channel by just looking over this direction and finding the flavor that I do enjoy. Yeah.
You bring a good point. Are you familiar with going to get a cookie?
Yes.
In most kink parties, especially if they're in somebody's house, there are treats. There are cookies. They're usually in the kitchen. And the idea is, sooner or later, you're going to find something that you don't want to look at or be in a room for. And you don't want to yuck someone else's yum. So it's, I'm going to go get a cookie. Whether there's actually cookies or not.
Yeah.
And that is fine.
Yeah.
It's not your thing.
Yeah. That's so great. I also, when, on my radar personally, when I'm playing with someone or when I'm thinking about playing with someone, just the like pre-consideration, if someone brings up the negotiation and the consent and like the full protocol of that gives me one clue that we're going to talk about boundaries and that I can lean into the idea of possibly being more open to trusting them. Not necessarily that I'm just going to jump into it, but the idea that you're bringing that up, I'm like, yes, okay, thank you. Like, yeah, I need that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so fun.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, people have been engaged with the questions here. I love that.
That is great.
If while people are taking that time, do you have any stories of like vivid stories of when you like impactful moments of aftercare that you remember, or times that you've experienced aftercare that you've been like noteworthy, like that was?
Yeah. I guess the first thing is when I was, younger and new to this, I didn't know anything about aftercare. When you're with a partner and you always want to experiment, you've never even heard of kink parties, and you just try stuff. And so I learned about aftercare when things started to go wrong. When it was like, wow, I got you to this spot, or you got me to this spot. I am a switch, by the way, so I dom and I sub, but therefore I am a switch. which to me is essential. It's not for everybody, but to me is essential. I will not use an implement that someone has not used on me first.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know what it feels like. So that's, sort of the safety protocols that I've got.
Mm-hmm.
But back you're just trying different things. It's like, wow, I got you this spot and you loved it. Why are you crying now? But I thought this was good. And so you had to start learning. You're learning learning more about aftercare.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned before I knew what it was called, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you just find out what the things are. I know a woman whose aftercare is cinnamon toast crunch. Um, always cinnamon toast crunch. Um,
My gosh. Hopefully, if you're still in opening the bedroom doors, hopefully we're in it right now. Something happened with the software where it just shut down and took us offline. So Andy and I are going to continue to talk for 10 more minutes until our expected time of ending. And hopefully we can see you all start to come in a little bit. And if not, I will stitch these together so that we can have it be cohesive. But I fully panicked, so I have no idea what we were talking about. Do you remember?
well, if there's any unusual or stories about aftercare.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I said, I was learning on my own for a while there, and discovering that aftercare was necessary the hard way.
Mm.
But other than that, and some odd requests sometimes, I can't think of any. It's like a plane flight, right? You don't want it to be an exciting story. I'm a storyteller. I go do storytelling events every month.
Yeah.
But aftercare stories, thankfully, I don't have too many of those because the whole point is to have a cool down. But actually, if you want to talk about some of the CNC comes up, consensual non-consent.
Yeah.
Comes up often when people are talking about the really deep edges that are primal play, the really deep parts of kink, the edge cases.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know what primal play is, Andy.
Primal play. So, I just sidetracked with another story that I will tell you later.
Okay.
Community.
Uh-huh.
The story I'm going to tell now is so primal play. It begins with growling, right? Biting.
Great.
Right.
Sounds great.
So, but it can get very much in depth. I know two people who they teach primal play and they teach the deep end of primal play, and they both are martial artists, and both of them. Well, she will. Her goal is to take a chunk out of you. I mean, she will bite to remove muscle.
Whoa!
Right? But she only does that. She only does that with her main partner, who can fight her off. They never succeed because they're that good at wrestling and martial arts and things. But I got to see them both. They were teaching a primal class. This was about a year and a half ago. They were teaching a primal class the next day, and they were still up. They had not done the aftercare. They had not. So they were actually pacing in front of this room like caged tigers.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah, and the room is packed to capacity with a whole bunch of people into primal play. And we're in the audience just sitting there going, because I'm being triggered by, because I love primal play. I become nonverbal, in that. And so people ask, what do you talk about? There's no talk in primal play. Animals don't talk. And here in Austin, there's actually what they call the hunt, which after lots and lots of discussions of consent and aftercare, the hunt begins, and there are naked prey running through the woods and predators running through the woods, and there's lots of rules. Who's allowed to tackle you? Only your partner you came with, or you open anything? And what does tackle mean? And so there's lots and lots of safety concerns. But this reminded me that one of the bits of aftercare that I didn't even mention is first aid.
Especially
bandages, salves, lotions. for lots of things, it's
Yeah.
essential. You take off the things, you get them warm, but you also apply first aid sometimes.
Mm.
Um, the essential piece, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So primal play is that, and CNC. These are people who would like the fantasy where somebody breaks into my house and I'm already asleep and has non-consensual sex with me. But we've already established ahead of time. Here's the alarm clock. Please don't break my windows. you know, all, all these things.
Yeah.
Um, but as you can imagine, especially when you do a CNC scene where it's okay, sometime during the month of June it's going to happen, and you're going to go to sleep every night not knowing if tonight's the night. That's
Exciting.
going to create lots of feels, right?
Yeah.
And so when it finally happens, if the Dom waits until July 28th, June 28th, you're already the drop from that is going to be tremendous because it's finally
Yeah.
happened. It's finally it was phenomenal. But it's like when it's the kids when Christmas is over, you have all this hype for Christmas, and then Christmas is over, and you're like, it's dropped, right?
Yeah.
I had my Christmas, I had my scene. So um, yeah, yeah. So and this is not a conversation around the deep end of kink,
Mm-hmm.
but you want to have long consent conversations,
Mm-hmm.
long important written consent conversations. Combine primal play with CNC.
Mm-hmm. My
Yeah,
gosh.
and those are. I don't even want to mention that to beginners or intermediate people or
Uh-huh.
anything. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but no matter how deep you're playing, make sure the aftercare is as in depth as everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Because between the consent conversation and the foreplay and the aftercare, of course, is okay. You have agreed that I'm gonna flog you for 5 minutes straight with this,
Mm-hmm.
and then we use this implement for 5 minutes, and this implement for 5 minutes, and then this implement for 5 minutes, and then we're done. Okay, 20 minutes. You know, that's a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
The aftercare has to have the same level of detail.
I like that emphasis.
People get so much into some people get so much into I get to use my new toy on you, or and the aftercare can be an afterthought. Don't let it be.
Mm-hmm.
The sub and the dom. If the dom is so excited to do a thing, in fact, let me mention one more thing about
Mm-hmm.
consent. You should also never have the consent conversation in the dungeon,
Mm.
in the dom space, or even at the dom's house,
Mm-hmm.
because there can be some, hopefully not manipulation, but
Mm-hmm.
there's already a lot of energy going on.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss the details for brunch. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
and if you're somebody who'd like to listen to conversations next to you at restaurants, I love doing that conversation.
With
People
me.
look.
And come again, what? Eating your yeah, it's exciting. That's the conversation I want to drop on.
What's that?
That's the conversation I want to, that's the conversation I'm like looking for when I'm eavesdropping.
No, you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Andy, is there
no.
anything else that you want to share before we kind of wrap up and go into like how people can get to work with you and learn from you?
Absolutely. Let me just spend 10 seconds. I'm thinking of other things.
Yeah.
Just aftercare can be anything that works. Let's throw a couple of examples out. Movie watching is a big thing. A favorite movie to watch. I know
Mm-hmm.
someone who likes to watch horror movies as aftercare. That seems weird to me, but it's a horror movie she's seen 100 times before, and so and it works. Bubble baths, candles,
Mm.
um, journal writing is
Mm.
one people don't think of often.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, just sit down while you're cuddling afterwards, while they take care of your wounds and such. Just write in your journal. It's very grounding. Write about what you liked and what you didn't like, because you may not be willing to talk to your partner about that yet. But I like this.
Mm-hmm.
So to finish that, okay. So how to get a hold of me?
Mm.
Um, Anything else before we get to that part?
Oh, I was just like, I need Thai food, I think, in my aftercare list of, like really
Perfect.
grounding, comforting food that is creamy and kind of heavy and flavorful to be like, come to right now. Yeah.
Let me give you a tip there. If
Uh-huh.
you're doing a scene that is literally 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, you can order the food ahead of time.
Yeah, that's the best part. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But be prepared if they get there too soon. I used to deliver pizza as a teenager, and
Mhm.
I clearly interrupted people many times because the pizza came too soon. The
Oh
postcoital pizza came
my
too soon.
gosh.
So, so
I
be
love,
careful of that.
yeah.
But in the days of COVID, where they go just drop it at your front door, this
Yeah.
works beautifully.
Yeah.
Just go get it when you're done. Go get it
Yeah.
when you need it.
Amazing. So if people want to learn more, I know that you have some classes coming up. You and Caress have Mindful Passion. So how can people get in contact with you or learn from you or get coached from
The
you?
easiest way right now is to follow us on Instagram
Cool.
at Mindful Passions.
Awesome.
That's it. At Mindful Passions. We also
Great.
have mindfulpassions.co. And if you want to have any coaching bias, you want to schedule us, go ahead and schedule a free 45-minute session with us where we can talk about what your needs are for coaching, for whatever you need, for teaching whatever you need.
Cool.
But right now, where we're announcing all of our new things coming up is on our main Instagram page, Mindful
Sweet.
Passions.
Awesome.
All right.
Um, when is that Mind Fucking 101 class happening?
That one is happening. We're going to do it again, I believe, in June. When we're going to announce it on Instagram. And
Okay.
I've got
Cool.
in 2 weeks, I've got a 2 hour class on consent communication and negotiation.
Ooh,
So, and by the
cool.
way, these are all intro classes that we're teaching through
Ooh,
Sex Positive Portland, through other places that we're doing these. And it's actually an intro to a series of things that we're going to be creating on our own from our own site. Uh,
sweet.
on So we're going to have an in-depth course on just humiliation, right? An in-depth course on depersonalization,
Mm.
you know. So objectification, each of these things is going to have its own in-depth course. But we do these one-on-ones to see, what you're interested in, what you like, what you don't like, so you know where to go from there.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Gosh, that sounds so intriguing. I'm like, depersonalization. What? Amazing. Thank you so much for being
That is all covered in the mind fucking.
Yeah, yeah. If anyone wants to join me next week, I am teaching for Shebop. I am teaching the Pleasure Mastery class, and that is going to go into the erotic blueprint system and framework where you get to understand your specific map for arousal, turn on, pleasure, and more. There will be a live demo in that's super saucy. You'll basically get to watch me turn someone on with the tools that I'm going to give you in that class. So that's next Thursday at 5:30 p.m. PST, and I believe the class is $15 to $25. You can look on sheboptheshop.com, and I'll post something in our group as well. Cool. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
So my allergies are kicking in.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks all out there. Lots of good questions.
Yeah, for the 4 people that managed to find us somehow in like the cosmic popcorn after we got shut down somehow by the software that we're on. Thank you so much for still sticking with us and finding us somehow. And I'll stitch this all together so in the recording so that people can watch it all in one. Awesome. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.